Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Psalm a Day. My name is Evan, and I'm one of the ministers at St Mary's Anglican Church. Today, we're looking at Psalm 78, but we're also looking at some family ministry sort of things. We'll get there in a minute, but let me show you how we're going to get there. So, the way that Trent and I are covering Psalm 78, we're actually going to break it up into three segments because it is so large. And the first segment we're reading today is verses 1 to 16. Tomorrow I'll do verses 17 to 31, and then on Sunday Trent will hit off the rest of the psalm for us. Pray for him because that's a big chunk. But today, in this particular psalm, there is a bit that grabbed my attention as soon as I read it, and when I was thinking of it, this is all that I wanted to talk about. So I want you to come on the journey with me. If you haven't read the psalm yourself, I encourage you to do that now before we get stuck into it. But the bit that I want to focus on is just verses 1 through 8. And what happens in verses 1 to 8 is that God has given his people good things, wonderful things, and he has done good things for him. And he wants the people who have lived in those things to pass those stories of those good things on to their children, and for their children to pass them on. And that's pretty much summed up in verse 6, so that the next generation would know them, even the children yet to be born, and they in turn would tell their children. And at the beginning of verse 7, then they would put their trust in God. They will not forget his deeds, but they will keep his commands. And so this verse pretty much sums up the biblical mandate that is put on parenting, that if you're a Christian parent, then the onus is on you to teach your children and your youth about God, about Jesus, and about what he wants for their lives. It's a pretty common opinion that perhaps that's something which the church does. And that's why we have youth and kids ministers. That's why we have kids ministries. That's why we have youth ministries. And so we can sometimes feel like we want to palm off that sort of ministry to them. But when we look into the Bible, we are, I was going to say reminded, but perhaps we are sometimes confronted with the truth that actually, if we are parents, raising our children in this particular way and teaching Jesus to our children falls on us. It's our responsibility. And so because of that, what I wanted to do today was launch off that little platform and talk about Christian kids growing up in Christian families. How can these youth, these kids, not just inherit a faith from their parents, but actually own the faith that they receive? And to do this, I have to be pretty upfront and say I have no experience in this because I didn't do it myself. I came from a completely non-Christian family, and so I've had to call on a couple of friends and ask for some advice. So a big shout out to Makito Maishita and to Ethan Crawshaw, as well as Stu Crawshaw. Thanks, guys, very much for giving me some info and sharing some wisdom. And so the first part of the wisdom that I want to, or I guess the tips that I want to share with you, is for Christian youth and kids. How can you not just inherit your faith, but how can you own your faith? As I was talking to these guys, and I think throughout I guess my limited experience as a minister, one of the first things that came up was that you have to make a decision at one point. You have to make a decision. Is this my faith? Is this what I want to believe in? And if it is, then what am I going to do about it? Making assertive, I guess, decisions, and then making positive movements towards that is really, really important. Because if it's just something that you do, or something that your parents do, or something you do with your family, just something you do with your family, then you can't own that, can you? You can't keep that as yours. And part of this choosing to be your faith, you may be a pastor's kid, as affectionately known as a PK. I look forward to having my own PKs one day, God willing. But if you're a PK, you're probably known as that. And you might be at a school and everyone knows that your dad's the minister. Or you're at school or you're at church and everyone knows that your dad or your mum is in ministry. And part of that for you will be owning that and saying, yes, my dad or my mum is in ministry, but that's not the reason I'm a Christian. And actually I don't want to make it sound too confrontational, like coming up against people, but actually using that conversation as a way in to talk about the gospel and share what it is that not just your parents believe in, but you believe in as well. That's a big part of owning your faith. Part of accepting that faith is also wrestling with the doubts and following up on the doubts. And so it's the same, not just with Christian kids, but not just kids who grow up in Christian families, but all kids who would call themselves Christian, wrestling with doubts and actually, being honest with your doubts and coming to people and talking about them is the way to move through them. If we kind of keep them to ourselves or allow them to sort of fester away, then don't be surprised when we start to kind of slide away. Third thing that came up is that once you have if you've decided to be a Christian and decided to have that faith, then what you want to do is serve, read, and pray for yourself and for your own faith. Do it. Put that responsibility on you. All right. Take initiative on that. When I was talking to one of the guys, the phrase he used was, "Don't just be brought to church. Come to church. Come to church." And do what you can to serve, or do what you want to do to serve. Jump on slides, jump on music team, that sort of stuff. But do it because you want to do it, not because you are being made to do it, or because that's what your family is doing or something. Make it yours. Make it your service. Make it your contribution to the way that we meet on the weekend. And so I guess to sum that up, we might say, do you want this faith? And if so, what are you going to do about it? Fourthly, there are a series of questions you can ask if you're still thinking about whether it is your faith or whether it is just a religion that perhaps you've inherited. Instead of thinking about is it me and it's about me and my family, or about what my family do, or where we go on Sunday, think about actually it's about me and God. What does that situation look like? What does that relationship look like? The other thing you can ask yourself is, or you can take steps to doing is, how would I best grow as a Christian? Now, for some people, that might mean going to a different church to your family. That can be really difficult and it can be really hard. It works for some people and it's really helpful for some people. But at the same time, please do realize that your family is a unit. And so when you decide to go to a different church, even if it is for your own spiritual benefit, your own spiritual growth, you break up the unit a little bit. And so, if possible, try to go with your family to church, in the morning or whatever. And then, if there's an evening congregation nearby, then by all means go to that. But you are splitting yourself and you're making it harder to commit one way or another, and you're making it harder to serve. Another great option is being comfortable in the church you are with your family, and being comfortable serving alongside them. This can be a bit of a more mature choice, I suppose, being able to accept that actually, yes, my family goes here, and yes, I can feel a little bit stifled, I can feel a little bit smothered by that, but I want to be here and I want to serve with them, because they're not just my family, they're also my brothers and sisters in Christ. So hopefully that's a couple helpful tips for youth and kids. But now for parents, how can we encourage our kids to not just inherit their faith but own their faith? And thankfully, I've picked up some really helpful tips from the same guys. And so one of the first ones is, as a parent, pray for your kids. Pray not only that they would grow as Christians, but pray that they would get involved in church. And pray you would actually have conversations with your kids about God, and have conversations with your kids where they're at. Have conversations with them, what they're reading, what they're praying about. And then follow up on that prayer. Follow up and actually do those things. And know that God is going ahead of you because of that prayer. Another Tip number 2 is do it as a team. And so a couple of families that I know who have uh, reared really just inspiring Christian kids, they do it as a team and they work together as a team. They pray as a team. They'll share info as a team. And so that means that for some of us where we might be the Christian and our partner isn't the Christian, if we're currently single, it can be really difficult. And so partnering with someone from the church can be really helpful in this. Or partnering with the person whom you would like to feel that. I want to be really careful how I say this, but who's going to be the role model for someone? So if you're a single mum, who's going to be that older male role model? Or if you're a single dad, who's going to be that older female model? It'd be really good to chat with that person, partner with that person, and say, hey, this is what I'm hoping can happen. How can we work together on the discipleship of my child? Tip number 3 is, I guess this is the one you hear all the time, but simple family time. And so one thing which lots of people have said is family devotions. So whether you do it, around the dinner table or you do it together on the couches or whatever, but spend time in God's word together. And encourage your kids not to do that because that's, particularly if they are Christian, to do that because they are Christian, not just because they live under your roof. That can be the way to kind of force them into doing it. Hey, buddy. But to do it because this is something that they want. This is how they want to grow. Hey, pal. This one's important because you actually model your own faith. And you actually, just by doing the Bible study yourself, hey, pal, just by doing it, you're actually modeling what it means to be a Christian, how you read the Bible, and also how to lead a family as a Christian as well in the future. Tip number 4 is live life with them, not for them. And so what I guess is meant by that is as they go through their Christian walk, do it with them. You might be tempted to answer all the questions. You might be tempted to solve all the problems, to solve all the dilemmas, and live life for them in that way. Let them go through it. If they're struggling with doubts, if they're struggling with those sort of things, and they want to talk to you about it, then yeah, absolutely take it to them. But life is difficult, life is hard, and we struggle. And it's in those times that we are refined and made more pure than gold, according to 1 Peter. So let them have that. Try not to take that away from them. What that means for every specific person, I don't know. I don't think I'll be able to tell you, and I think it would be wrong for me to try and tell you. But, yeah. Okay, final tip number 5, and that is encourage commitment. Now, what I mean by that is you want to encourage them to be Christians, and you want to encourage them to own their faith. You also want to encourage them to come to church. And I did hear a couple stories about how forcing people to come to church works in the long run, and how sitting kids down and having discussions with them worked in the long run. So I don't think I'm in a position where I could say, force your kids to come to church every Sunday, because I also know scenarios where it doesn't work. But what I mean, and what the guys mean by encourage commitment is, if they want to do something, or if they want to do kids ministry, if they want to do youth ministry, as in be a part of it, or do church, then help them do it to the best of their ability, and help them to do it to the degree which you understand church and you understand those things. What I mean by that is church and youth group and kids group is more important than a lot of other things going around. And so, Johnny's come home from school and he's feeling a bit tired, feels like he wants to stay home instead of go to youth that night. No, encourage Johnny, help Johnny to realize that actually he does want to go to youth group, because youth group is really important. It's important for his growth and the growth of all those whom he sees and encourages. And so maybe Jill has a party on Friday, but we want to encourage sacrificial behavior. We want to encourage people to realize actually that spending time with God's church and spending time in the Christian community is more important than those sort of stuff. So we encourage sacrificial behavior. Say, actually, no, do you really want to go to that party? Youth is better than that. Youth is more important than that. Don't allow them to stay home, but encourage them to to be in the community and partner with the community. Yeah, the onus is on you to teach them how to be Christians, but you're not alone in it. That's my job, to support you and to encourage you and to help you. And anything that I can do to make, to do those things, I'm here. And so hit me up, give me a call. That being said, don't palm off your responsibility to me or to the church. Because biblically, you're accountable. You're accountable to your kids. It's not my job to rear your children as Christians. That's yours. My job is to support and to help. So if anything in the video has piqued your interest, or if there's anything that I can do to support you and your family ministry, or if there's anything I can do to support you as you grow in your faith, then please let me know. Well, I hope today has been helpful for you. I hope you've enjoyed our small little journey to Psalm 78, but also our large excursus around it. Grace and peace to you.